I was so proud that my friend Gail took a risk instead of only talking about what she'd like to do one day. In her mid-40s, Gail had hardly travelled much in the States, let alone abroad. And yet here she was, completely out of her comfort zone in Rome, where she was not only surviving, but thriving. Despite obstacles, and yes, there were quite a few, she didn't give up. She was now having the adventure of a lifetime, and I saw it firsthand as she showed me around the city that she loved. Gail lived in Rome for 5 years and was eventually joined by our mutual friend Margaret, who wrote a book about her escapades entitled Wanted in Rome. My two friends became the best of pals, and I was so happy to introduce two people who I'm honoured to say are my lifetime friends. No matter what or where we fancy our lives going, we mustn't be afraid to take the leap. There's always a parachute or a friend, old or new, to help us on the way. We just got to believe that there's always someone, somewhere, looking out for us in this world or even the next. After a memorable time in Rome with Gail, I returned to Los Angeles, where there was a phone message waiting for me from Barry Levinson. He and his family had recently moved to Ross in the Marin County area of Northern California, and Barry asked if I could spend a couple of weeks there helping him write an adaptation of a book called Sleepers by Lorenzo Carcaterra. Then Barry was going to direct it. I was available, as it happened. And the next day, a copy of the book arrived for me to read prior to my trip to Ross. I was really surprised that Barry would want to direct a film of this nature, because it was completely different from anything he'd directed in the past. Of course, that was the challenge for him. I remember after he directed young Sherlock Holmes, he was constantly sent scripts with similar storylines. Why would I want to keep directing the same story over and over? Where's the fun in that? He told me. I would never have described Sleepers as fun, but it was most definitely challenging. The story was based on Lorenzo's teenage experiences in a reform school, where he was sent with 3 of his friends after almost killing a man in a prank gone wrong. In this institution, the boys were systematically brutalized by the guards, but years later they get revenge by killing their abusers. After the release of the book and film, there was considerable controversy over the truth of some of the facts, but Lorenzo was adamant that it was all true. Although, of course, keeping in mind that some details might have been changed for the sake of dramatic license, often the norm when biographical films are made. So this was to be Barry's next film. And a few days later, I was sitting in a stretch limo on my way to LAX for my flight to San Francisco. Limousines were one of the nice perks of the job, and I'm sure my neighbours in Santa Monica were curious who this famous person must be. It was particularly interesting when I arrived at the airport and stepped out of the limo, with the chauffeur helping me with my luggage and finding a porter. Although limos were a common sight in Los Angeles, most people couldn't help but have a good look in case a celebrity stepped out of this luxurious version of a taxi. Sorry guys, it's just little old me. When I arrived in San Francisco, another chauffeur carrying a large card with my name printed on it met me, took my luggage and led me to another luxury car. I was driven to a small hotel, the Courtyard in Larkspur Landing, just a few miles from where Barry was now living. I discovered that regular ferries cross from Larkspur to San Francisco, a nice alternative to road travel for Marin County commuters. The first time I took the ferry, I was fascinated to see San Quentin Prison looming over the bay. It gave me a bit of a chill. and I was much happier looking forward to the Golden Gate Bridge. A rental car had been ordered, and the next day I drove to Levinson's beautiful new home and started working with Barry on the screenplay. We talked about the story for a while, and I shared my thoughts and horror at the abuse Lorenzo and his friends were subjected to. Then Barry began dictating the script, which, as usual, I wrote down in shorthand and transcribed into screenplay format with my usual personal changes. The script was finished within 3 weeks, and Barry went on to direct Sleepers the following year. It starred a stellar cast including Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman and Brad Pitt, but sadly I was not involved in the production of this film. Back in Los Angeles, while I waited for another job to come my way, or another call to work on a Levinson project, I started teaching scene study classes at night. I was also asked to give talks to several acting classes in Hollywood, and I really enjoyed sharing my knowledge with these actors. It was very satisfying. At one of the classes, actor John Otrin, who I'd met a few times, approached me and asked if I wanted to get involved in organising a film festival in the Cayman Islands. That sounded like a very interesting proposition. It turns out that John had a friend, well, let's call him Max, whose father lived on Grand Cayman. Over gin and tonics at the local country club, Max had mulled over the idea with his dad of having a film festival on the island. "Oh, wonderful idea, son. Make it happen." Max, a man in his early 30s, wasn't in the film industry. I think he was in real estate. I could never quite figure out what he did. Nevertheless, he appeared to have money and was willing to put together a team of professionals who could, as his father put it, make it happen. His Cayman Islands Film Festival letterheading, with a logo of a pirate carrying a camera on its shoulder instead of a parrot, listed a number of film industry professionals who were on the board, and it all seemed pretty legit. For the moment, though, it seemed that John and Max were the only two people actively involved in getting the film festival off the ground. Since a date had already been set for this event, and they had less than 6 months to prepare for it, I thought they were being very optimistic, especially arranging a film festival in a foreign country. It was clear they desperately needed an organiser. And with that in mind, Max had been in touch with an event coordinator in Minneapolis, Betsy, as well as a woman who was involved with the Pasadena Tournament of Roses, Terry. But I was curious why he hadn't contacted someone with film festival experience. The next step, Max said, was that we should rendezvous in the Cayman Islands and meet the local organisers. I was okay with that. A few days in Grand Cayman. Yes, that would be fine. He booked airline tickets for us all and arranged rooms in a very nice hotel. So far, so good. John was a sweetheart, and I got along well with Betsy and Terry, who were both very smart and astute. But us three wise women were still not sure about Max. He always seemed so vague about everything. When I asked him about sponsors, he indicated that it wouldn't be a problem, and there's plenty of money in the Caymans. Well, I didn't doubt that, considering it's one of the world's major international banking hubs. But since there wasn't even an operating budget in place, I wondered how he intended to approach these finance people. To tell you the truth, I was actually hoping to meet someone who might be interested in financing my script, Back to the World. So maybe there was method in my madness. Next time, searching for films at the Sundance Film Festival, and that new career I indicated in my last episode. If you're enjoying my episodes, My social media guru, Horatio, has asked that you please like the recordings, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified when I post my next episode on Sunday. Many thanks, and your support is greatly appreciated.